Although he was a Norman by inclination and spirit, Claude Monet was actually born in 1840 in Paris, on Rue Lafitte, a truly fitting sign of destiny, as it was the street of the art dealers. His full birth name was Oscar Claude. He was the second son of two successful merchants.
In 1845, I believe, their business is struggling, but they have family living in Le Havre.
So they move there, and his father, in particular, becomes involved once again within the family context, with a company that sells all sorts of supplies to the ships in the port of Le Havre.
Undisciplined from birth, Oscar Claude, as a child, could not stand any rules. For him, school was nothing more than a prison. Rebellious, he very early on developed a strong thirst for independence.
From a very young age, Monet displayed his bad temper, or rather, his strong personality, his refusal of established rules. He practically never went to class, almost never did. He would play truant, he would gallop freely on the cliffs. When one looks at his notebooks, he does take some notes, it's true, but he mainly makes drawings, illuminations within the margins. And then he caricatures his professors. He creates caricatures, those portrait charges, as they used to say.
Monet, if I may say, gains a little fame in Le Havre thanks to his caricatures. Of course, the teachers are the first, quote-unquote, victims. He then soon starts making caricatures of famous people from Le Havre.
And he displays his caricatures in the window of his papermaker named Monsieur Gravier. And these posters are so abominable, the portraits are so heavily caricatured, that these people come and purchase them immediately so they won't be seen.
Monet understands that there is a real opportunity for business here, and since he is in demand, he raises the prices. He's someone who is very, very shrewd. He knows how all of this works. His parents were merchants. Let's not forget that. So he knows that a penny is a penny.
A minor local celebrity thanks to his caricatures, young Monet was destined to encounter an established painter, some 30 years old, Eugène Boudin. Boudin also displayed his works alongside Monet in Gravier's shop window. Famous throughout the region for his beautiful beaches and seascapes, this Honfleur painter was also known as the King of Skies. Impressed by young Monet's sketches, he desired to meet him.
Monet is extremely hesitant about this. He has already seen the kind of work Boudin has produced. These small, terrifying little things, you see. They call them landscapes, but honestly, what does that even mean? It appears this young Boudin is quite persistent, and Boudin is such an incredibly charming, delightful, and attentive man that Monet finds himself swayed when Boudin suggests he possesses a talent for drawing that truly merits going a bit further, that he should pursue something more. Monet eventually resigns himself.
He accompanies Boudin. Boudin takes him along with him, little Monet, who's just 16 or 17, and brings him to the cliffs.
With Boudin, he truly starts to open his own perspective.
He teaches him to draw the sea, to draw the sky. And Monet himself would later confess, saying, "Without Boudin, I would never have become Claude Monet."
And then, he very quickly makes it known to his family that he wants to become a painter. So you can well imagine the family's reaction. It was one of worry and outright refusal. There was no way they would accept that.
Despite his father's reluctance, but supported by his aunt, who had always loved painting, the young Claude decided to set off at the age of 19 to conquer Paris. His only baggage was his enthusiasm and his talent, his faith in his art, and more concretely, 2,000 francs, a comfortable little sum earned through the sale of his caricatures, enough to see him through.
He's going to the least expensive, the studio of a certain Swiss Charles Glaire, and who also possessed an exceptional generosity. When he took over the management of the workshop that Monet was about to join, he agreed that the students who came to learn their craft from him would not have to pay.
And he meets some students, just like him, who have a real desire to paint.
He meets Renoir, who becomes his lifelong friend. They truly shared some incredibly powerful moments, even setting up their easels in the very same places and painting the exact same subjects.
At the same time, Basile arrives, who himself comes from a well-to-do Protestant bourgeois family in Montpellier, and who probably becomes Monet's closest friend during that particular period. He is tragically killed in the Battle of Beaune-la-Rolande at the very beginning of the Franco-Prussian War of 1870.
This small group, consisting of Basile, Renoir, and Monet, they meet and soon begin to form a close bond. Imagine the scene. Renoir would hear Mr. Glare speaking with his very distinct Vaudois accent, telling him, while examining one of his drawings, "But just look at the feet that you have made. These feet are not tolerable in a classic drawing. Start over." So Renoir would try to explain himself, saying that he simply painted what he saw, and Glare would burst out in the corridor saying, "You don't paint what you see. We paint the ideal, reaching beyond the limits of what we can see." Monet would then turn to the others and declare, "Let's get out of here." And so he would suggest to everyone that they should go and paint outside in the open air.
Thanks to the recent invention of the paint tube, which was at last made portable, our young uncompromising artists, as they like to call themselves, set out to follow in the footsteps of Corot and Millet, other landscape painters, seeking out sites in the Fontainebleau forest, along the banks of the Seine, or in Normandy. Their quest, to capture the subtle variations of light as close to the very moment as possible, and forever banish black from their palette. The creative energy is absolutely total. Before long, their artistic group begins to grow. Pissarro and Sisley then join this expanding group.
Sisley, when going into the forest like that, would always ask Renoir to choose the inn based on the girl, the serving maid, just to be certain there was at least one pretty girl present. He was a bit of the group's seducer.
This is the bohemian life they lead. They share everything. They work together on the very same motifs.
They often stay at each other's places, gladly do favours for one another, spend the evenings at the local cafe, evenings where they would always put the world to rights, of course, in Montmartre, particularly at the famous Café Gerbois.
And it's truly in this Gerbois Café that they start new pictorial challenges.
Well then, I believe that the individual who possesses the strongest personality within this entire group of painters is most certainly our Claude Monet.
In the artistic endeavor of the Second Empire, a painter had no other option to gain recognition and find buyers than to be exhibited at the official salon. Held annually at the former Palace of Industry, this exhibition is considered a highly official institution. It is overseen by the Superintendent of Fine Arts. For Monet and his circle, having their work displayed there was the absolute key to securing a life free from financial hardship.
And so, to enter the exhibition, you must pass through the rigorous scrutiny of the jury. The rules of the game are clear, definite, and precise. First, you must draw, and color only comes in later as a kind of accessory. And what's more, there is no important painting without a grand subject.
In these exhibition halls where few Impressionists were ever displayed, the works of the painter Gustave Moreau were very often accepted and even received medals. This is evidenced by the artist's opulent private mansion on Rue de la Rochefoucauld, far from the joyful bohemian lifestyle of Monet. An officer of the Legion of Honor, Moreau specialized in large formats with entirely mythological themes. The realm of dreams is entirely his domain. There's absolutely no place here for any kind of reality. In his works, Europa is carried away, and Jupiter radiates with all his powerful fire. In this place, the light within the studio comes directly from the north, as is required, in order to avoid any kind of variation, and the color black is carefully mixed with the other pigments to better allow us to feel the dramatic intensity of the subjects. We are certainly far removed from the everyday, common landscapes of Claude and his contemporaries.
What one can notice here is that there isn't a square centimetre lost on the walls. The paintings are next to each other. It was essentially the same thing in the great salons, the official painting salons recognised by the Academy. The painters were placed right next to one another, so much so that you could easily confuse or perhaps not appreciate one painting from another. But to gain entry into the prestigious art salons, one had to be qualified, in a certain sense, by a jury from the Academy. Painters, like Moreau, naturally, regularly exhibited their works and garnered numerous prizes, medals in abundance, while others, Courbet, Millet, all those artists, Manet, were rejected for a very long time, until the Emperor, in a very liberal gesture, in 1863, created the Salon des Refusés. And it was from that moment on that our future Impressionists would begin to exhibit their art.
It became, in a way, a sort of rebels' headquarters. In this Salon des Refusés, there is a particularly striking painting, a naked woman sitting in the grass. Her dress is lying next to her. There's an overturned basket with figs inside, and cherries are spilling out of it. There are two men sitting there, dressed. Of course, it's the lunch on the grass. This is a work by Manet. And according to the art critics of that time, it's obviously a completely immoral painting.
Monet, upon seeing this work, immediately and quite rightly want to take on that very challenge. He also want to paint a luncheon on the grass, and he want to paint it, this time, out in the open air.
He'll paint it in Fontainebleau Forest.
Monet is very mad because he was, after all, the senior figure of that era. Who is it, that boy, who dares to claim to be copying me? There was a brief moment of hesitation between them. And then Monet truly falls, not in love with Monet, but completely under the spell of Monet, who was a gruff man, but also quite endearing. And a truly filial and paternal relationship start between them.
All of these artists had chosen, just like their romantic predecessors, to reside in a new quarter of Paris, situated at the base of Montmartre's famous hill, which was called New Athens. Sensitive to the Haussmannian transformations undertaken in this district, the Impressionists, when they are not in the countryside, take as their subject the traffic of Paris and a brand new, fascinating means of transport, the train. It must be said that the Saint-Lazare station was, for Monet, the very first stop for all his wanderings in Normandy.
He's impressed one day, seeing all the steam escaping from the locomotives beneath the glass roof of Saint-Lazare. So he goes, with the extraordinary arrogance and confidence that Monet was capable of, to see the Saint-Lazare station master. He says, "Sir, I am a painter, Claude Monet, and I have chosen your station." The station master is utter astonishment, and almost placed the entire station at Monet's disposal. It is said that at one point, Monet had a subject that absolutely must not move, that must not change, and that they would ensure the train departs later because Monet was in the process of painting. So this is also that extraordinary, and at the same time, unwavering self-assurance of Monet, who, at that particular moment in time, did not possess a single penny, and who therefore went out and actively seek these specific artistic subjects, which he desires to fully embrace and make entirely his very own.
One day, in Le Havre, in the outer harbour, he wakes up in his small hotel room, he opens his shutters, and he sees an absolutely fantastic landscape. He picks up his brush, a small canvas, and then, with a few swift, easy movements, he creates a painting that is absolutely captivating, with the morning sun just beginning to rise above the outer harbour. And Monet exhibits this painting.
The 1874 exhibition was a major event. It was the first independent show of the famous annual Salon. It took place in a space belonging to the photographer Nadar, loaned for the occasion. 35 painters exhibited 165 paintings there. Monet notably presents here, among other beautiful pieces, a magnificent painting of a poppy field and his famous impression, Sunrise, depicting Le Havre.
And when it was time to make the catalogue for this exhibition, Renoir's brother said to him, "Hey Monet, what title should we give your painting? We can't put boat leaving port or boat entering port again. It's always the same thing."